There exist two foundational elements which comprise all that is, in accordance to the pervasive belief of man. These elements are the belief in a pervasive entity, which authoritatively orders the interrelated components of reality, and the belief that such entity is a highly stable and unchanging catalyst by which natural laws cause order among the interrelated components of reality. This entity acts upon reality because reality is hung upon the mass of the entity. A painting is but mere blobs of paint without a canvas. Like a canvas, the entity stretches across time and space, giving a foothold to those things which are developed upon it. The entity is the reality of fixedness. If the reality of fixedness is met with the possibility of chaos, vibration unfolds. By vibration was light become, and heat, then sound, and components were settled and dispersed within the fixed chaos. Those things which were once frozen became mobile. Those things in disarray became ordered, and form became a moving form, a form beyond the fixedness, an animation within a solid platform, a particle of matter able to pass through anything, having characteristics indicative of its chaotic nature, remaining constant due to its solid condition. If we take a cube of baking soda and introduce vinegar to it, we have exemplified the solid in the soda and chaos in the vinegar. As these two items come together, a third element appears, the foam of precipitate. Air bubbles expand the precipitate, those bubbles bound of the solution, which was the combined result of both baking soda and vinegar. We can define this coming together of these two separate elements and study the result of such combination. This is an explanation given to me, and it is called the Megillah. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. We open our eyes in the theater of space, a place of indefinite shape and volume. We can call it space because of its unfilledness. We can designate it as something other than that which is something. Rather, we distinguish it as a place full of the lack of something, that which scientist proclaims is a vacuum. Definition of a vacuum is an enclosed space from which all matter has been removed. Do we surmise that space, then, is held in some massive enclosure? Do we purport that the matter in suspension within space's frame is not matter? Space, having no definite shape or volume, retains the properties of a gas, one of the states of matter. Making application under the ideal gas law, space exhibits properties of buoyancy, pressure equivalency, and consistency within variant temperatures. Is not a hot sun suspended and a cold planet also? In the time prior to creation, space was devoid of the things which we know of as stars, planets, and space debris. The mass of space was unobstructed, pure space, comprised of nothing but space. It was a place where nothingness was solidly entrenched, a space which could not be pierced, for nothing existed to pierce it, a solid of non-matter, antimatter. Place a pile of salt on a piece of paper laid over the front of a speaker lying on its back and turn up the volume. The granules of salt dance across the surface and develop areas on the paper of salt concentration and dissipation. Higher tones cause a different response than lower tones, soft tones and sharp tones, constant tones and intermittent. Sound is a physical organizer, capable of motivating the animate into movement. Sound occurs as a byproduct or precipitate of vibration. Considering a place within the great space of solid antimatter, vibration-producing sound would only be possible as antimatter has capacity to move. We might comprehend this potential in antimatter by considering its composition as a mass of densely packed springs, loaded with kinetic energy with no room to express itself. Just as a compressed spring releases energy when the spring relaxes into its natural state, the components of antimatter contain an energy tension, which needs only be released. Expansion of these springs would result in a measurable wavelength, with vibration the end product. For a wavelength to produce sound or light, friction or heat, something must be moved, and movement requires the introduction of time. Do not produce wavelengths which are measurable until the antimatter realizes some capacity for movement. If antimatter is a solid, there would need to be a shifting out or a compaction within some portion of the solid to leave space for vibration. For vibration is the movement of matter as a physical response to the frequency of an energy wave. If we placed a block of salt on the speaker in our experiment and turned up the volume, the block of salt would not be compressed nor expanded. Though vibration of the mass might cause particles to be shaken loose from the block, this effect could only result in the disintegration of the block. It could not become another form or shape, such as a pyramid or a sphere. It cannot be anything other than the block of salt it was formed into, or a pulverized block of salt. It becomes apparent that many individual uniform particles of salt have ability to be formed into a variety of shapes, such as lines, arcs, waves, or circles. This can be accomplished by the application of sound waves, producing vibration. Likewise, vibration producing sound waves. So we may surmise the block of solid space would need to be reduced to separate, yet uniform particles of space to achieve organization by vibration. Otherwise, the springs would need to be let loose. Vibration produces a wide array of waves in the physical realm. A salt experiment is helped along by vibration of air waves, which we define as sound. The pressures which cause the salt particles to jump in differing intensities could also be considered a precipitate of vibration. At varying pulses or frequencies of vibration, recognized with specialized equipment, vibration is also found to produce a wide range of light and color. Vibration is the predecessor for producing friction. We find the household microwave producing heat, the result of radiant and mechanical energies of vibration. Microwaves designate those waves within the electromagnetic spectrum of shorter infrared and longer radio waves, waves which are capable of producing heat and light, and waves that are capable of producing sound. Radio waves are the longest measurable waves. Microwaves are more compacted. Infrared is a yet tighter wave, the color spectrum even more, then ultraviolet tighter still. Finally, we find X-rays in the tightest of waves, and radioactive gamma rays nearest inertia, or of the most minute wavelength. Matter is defined as anything which occupies space and has mass. Our solid of antimatter has adequate expansion to realize occupation, and adequate weight in its entirety to realize mass, even if its total combined weight were no more than the weight of a grain of sand. But for the realization of form, the antimatter has all constituents of matter, yet is not recognized as matter, for it is the preform of matter, antimatter. and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. A surprising thing happens when energy becomes involved with matter. It changes and does unexpected things. Electrolysis occurs as an example, which is the decomposition of a compound into similar substances by passing electricity through it. Electricity, like sound, is a form of energy. Energy is the ability to do work, that little poof of oomph which causes one thing to be affected by another thing. Somewhere within the solid of antimatter, some form of energy occurred, and this energy, by vibration, made a noise, a sound. It was not necessarily a great noise. In fact, it could well have been the most minuscule noise possible. Producing sound precipitates a vibration, pressure, illumination, and heat for the creation to begin to unfold. All that was required was for one spring to be relieved of its tension. These springs, when released, would have measurable wavelengths. We can imagine the spacing present between the coils of the spiral which comprises the spring, each spiral designated as a wavelength. Wavelengths can only be positive, yet energy can be both positive and negative. So being, these springs in their compressed state are inert, closed down tight, unmoving, packed tightly together, just a bare step away from starting life as gamma rays. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.